So, what was it like working with Anthony Kiedis on the Californication and By The Way records? Was there any particular way you and Rick Rubin approached recording him?
Well, the only thing that we did with Anthony almost every time is we used a certain microphone on him. The microphones are funny things. They're instruments, they're tools, and you got to find one that suits your voice, and you got to find one that you're comfortable with. And he ended up singing on both of those albums. He sang on a really common Shure microphone, a Shure SM7, which a lot of podcasters use now. It's still for sale. It's like a $300 or $400 mic or something. But it just, his voice just hits it just right. And Anthony's worked really hard on his vocals. He was taking voice lessons all the time when I worked with him, with one of the best guys in the world, this guy Ron, who is like the voice guru to all the stars. Anthony takes his job really seriously. And not only that, but he's got to write the words. And he's got to be Anthony, and he's got to have that attitude, and he's got to bring, he brings a lot of character to the voice. I don't know if, I don't think people would ever say he's got the widest range or that he could sing the highest note or the lowest note, but sounding like Anthony is no joke. And you got to say what you want to say so it's clear and sing it at the same time with attitude. And it's taken him a lifetime to do that, and he does it great. And he did it great then. He always has. But I don't think he was ever like, hey, I'm the best singer in the 8th grade. Let's start a band. I don't think that was ever his thing. I think he was just the guy that ended up on the mic.
That's awesome. Do you remember if Anthony was the kind of vocalist who would record for a few hours straight, or would he space things out more?
From what I'm just thinking about, I would think he would probably sing a song, 10 or 12 times and then call it good. Like, that's about all I need to do right now. Let's take inventory and see how good we are and play that back. So, if a 5-minute song, sing it 10 times, that's a solid hour right there.
That's cool. Would his vocals be doubled a lot?
I don't think there's a lot of doubling. Maybe on some of the choruses. Yeah, and then no effects either. Just no That's place cool. to hide. Like, here I am. Here's my voice, really loud.
That's cool.
Really loud and really dry.
So what was it like working with Anthony Kiedis on By The Way?
Anthony would, there were many times where he didn't cut any kind of a vocal with us as we recorded the song. He would do his vocals later or finish the words later. And he would often record, we set up a studio for him in a hotel, and he would do his vocals at a hotel, which was a really good idea because you can't sing 12 hours a day. And for him to rent a whole studio and only use it for 3 or 4 hours was, cost prohibitive. So he just rented a nice hotel room and set up a mobile recording studio there. And the price of a really nice hotel room is a lot cheaper than the price of a recording studio. So he could come and go from the hotel room or stay there if you wanted to, or just go there and hang out. It was nice, So that was different.
Interesting. So going back to Anthony's vocals, why was the Chateau Marmont Hotel chosen specifically as the place for him to record?
It's a great old hotel. I don't know if you've ever been there or stayed there.
I've been there once.
Great old hotel. It's very industry savvy and industry heavy, and a lot of celebrities go there. You can walk into the place, but they do kind of, there's enough security and enough privacy that you can kind of just be you. It's not the first time it's been done. But I think he just did it just because why not? Why wouldn't you want to go there? You go for a little lunch and go up to the room and put on your headphones and work for a few hours, and then, I don't know, maybe go sit by the pool or walk down Sunset and have a meal. Why go sit in a dark old recording studio when, some bunch of other knuckleheads are in the other rooms trying to stick their head in to see what you're doing? Why just go have a little privacy? And again, you can't sing 12 hours a day. And, he didn't really need an audience. So we just just buy him a microphone and a compressor and send him up to a room with a guy with a tape recorder. Or I think by the way, we had a Pro Tools rig for him that so he could do more vocals and keep more things, and they could do more processing. Just because the technology had caught up with their needs. Yeah, that's not the first time. I did it with a record with Grace Potter.
Oh, cool.
10 years ago. We're recording a record here at my studio with her, and she lived basically down around the corner. She had a house down around the corner from the Sunset Marquee, and we just decided, what the heck, let's just take some stuff. Let's rent. It's cheaper to rent a room, a cabin, like one of those cool little rooms, houses, little bungalow, and you don't bother anybody, and sing during the day. And singing's not loud. You work in headphones. And listening to somebody sing. And you can do a lot of work real quickly. And then, again, you can step outside, go to the bar, or stick your feet in the pool. It was fun.
That's cool. So was it only Anthony's vocals you guys did at the Chateau Marmont, or did the rest of the band at any point come by?
I don't remember anybody ever coming by.
Did Anthony ever record his vocals for By The Way with the rest of the band, or was all of it done at the hotel?
It seems to me that just because I spent so much time with John, I don't remember doing very many vocals with Anthony at all. If I had, I'd have had notebooks with lyrics and comp sheets, and I'd have had like hours and hours in my, days and days, vocals. So I think that he did most of those vocals at the hotel, and either used, one of the other engineers that Rick was using at the time, Andy Sheffs or Sylvia Massey or Dave Schiffman, or somebody would have been up there doing it, wouldn't me?
Interesting. So, in addition to the Californication By The Way records, you also had a hand in the Chili Peppers album One Hot Minute, but from what I understand, there was some controversy during the making of that record. What exactly is the story there?
The first day was kind of a disaster, and nothing sounded good, and speakers didn't sound good, and the console didn't sound good, and nothing sounded good. Second day, we tried some other stuff, and I rented equipment from Los Angeles, and one thing led to another, and it was just sounding terrible. And everybody's looking at me like, "Come on, engineer, what? This is what's going on here." So, to make a long story short, after 3 days, it sounded terrible, and I knew it sounded terrible, and I knew that it probably wasn't my problem, and it wasn't their problem. There was just some phenomenon in that studio at that time where something wasn't right. And they were all frustrated and looking at me, and Rick hadn't come to the session yet. And I finally just said, "Well, look, I think I got to go. I think I've got to make this easy on everybody. Just, stay here, find another guy. I've done my best. I got to go." And so that's basically what happened. I kind of let myself off of the One Hot Minute record, except that they all decided, like, well, maybe he's right. And they all followed me down to Los Angeles. We went into Sound City the next day and set up the session in like 3 hours, and it sounded amazing. And then back in those days, part of my job with Rick was to set up sessions and then hand it off to another guy and then go on and do another record. And so I got it all set up and handed it off to Brendan O'Brien, I think, at the time, and they made One Hot Minute down at Sound City. So that was 1994. And then I really didn't run into him again or see him again until Californication in 1998, 1999.
Well, that's a really interesting story. I mean, was that always, like, let's say the original studio for One Hot Minute sounded great. Was it always the intention for you to set it up and then head out, or is that something that kind of just developed?
Well, Rick Rubin is a super talented guy and super prolific and very busy, producing 2 or 3 records at a time all the time, and running a record company, and generally being a really cool guy. So it wasn't uncommon for me to be working on 2 or 3 records at a time with him. Sometimes I would just, get a record started and then hand it off to somebody else to do. They got ready to do One Hot Minute in 1994 with Dave in the band. Mm-hmm. And I got asked to engineer it. And of course, man, the Chili Peppers, they'd had Under the Bridge, they'd had a bunch of big hits, they were really happening. So getting asked to do a Chili Peppers record was fantastic. And I'd been working with Rick Rubin for many years before then, and Rick always produced their records. So I was kind of Rick's guy at the time.
When you were on One Hot Minute, did you ever actually get to see them recording anything?
No. Well, I think we actually did, but everybody was like, bummed out. It just wasn't sounding good. I mean, we did try to all play together. It was a beautiful studio, and a million hit records were made there. I don't know what the problem was. I tried everything in my power to get it to work, but nobody liked the sound. It wasn't just me. And I don't know. It's just like the planets weren't aligned or something. But,
I hear
you. Dave had a little bit more of a process then. When I worked on him on the Lowen and Navarro records, he just came in and we gave him a guitar and he played the song and that was it. He's pretty quiet. But by the time we did One Hot Minute, or they were doing One Hot Minute, he was Dave Navarro. He was like the man. So he had a process. He had a bunch of amps and he had a whole rig and it was complicated.
I hear you.
But he's sweet. He's a super sweet guy. It's just like his process was the process. You weren't ready till he was ready. But it wasn't a great environment. But we did play together a little bit. I don't know if any of those recordings exist anywhere.
Really? That's interesting. So going back to Californication and By The Way, we were talking about how for By The Way, Anthony Kiedis recorded his vocals by himself in the hotel, whereas with Californication, it was with the band in the studio. In general, from your perspective, what was the biggest difference in the making of Californication and By The Way?
The big difference between Californication and By The Way, the big difference was it was a double album. And that's more than twice as much work. By then, John had regained his full strength and his full power and his full credibility, and he was the leader of the band. He was a lion. He was amazing. And he was the major creative force. And in looking back at By The Way is way more complicated. There's background vocals on everything, several guitar layers on everything, big keyboard layers on everything. And John did all that. He had these modular synthesizers that were complicated, and he would spend hours getting sounds, and same with his guitar parts, and same with his background vocals. And, John is a super talented guy, but nowadays you would probably whip through those background vocals a little bit quicker because you would do your best and sing your best. And then somebody would shine them up and go, oh, that note's a little out of tune. Let's just fix that one. Well, then the high part's really hard to get. So let's just fix it up a little bit and put some reverb on it. But we're still recording on tape. And, let's do it again. Let's do it again. If it wasn't good enough, you couldn't keep it. Now in Pro Tools, if it wasn't good enough, you keep it and you fix it, And
Yeah.
it's a big difference. And so By The Way was time consuming, and it was, creativity isn't tedious, but the process of making records can be really slow, over and over and over to get one little part right because it's important. And how important is it to a whole double album to spend a couple hours on this one part, this one note, this one thing? That kind of stuff is, if you're not really into the process, or if you don't understand, or if you're not dedicated, it's like, what the heck? Why does this take so long? Well, how hard is it? Sing the song. You got the beat, you got the vocal. What's the problem? It's like, why is this so hard? But the biggest difference was obviously John's power. John was fully in charge of the band at that time, and there was, twice as many songs, maybe twice as many as there needed to be. It would have been a spectacular solo album.
Interesting. That's really cool. So you're saying it would have been okay, gotcha, okay.
I mean, a single album, not a solo.
Yeah.
I did do solo records with John in that period and after that period too, and those were really fun. Those were great.
That's killer. So with Californication, did you record the band off the floor, or was everything done in isolation?
No, it was somewhat isolated. I mean, that room, that Studio 2 at Cello has one big sort of flimsy ISO booth that, back in the 50s when they built that studio, they really weren't thinking that people were going to play that loud or I don't know, whatever. But no, we had Flea's bass rig in a room with enough isolation that if he made a mistake, which he never did, or if he wanted to replay it or fix something, the leakage wouldn't be a problem. And the same with John. The amps were not in the same room as the drums, but they were close enough that there was some there was some leakage back and forth. So yeah, it was all done at the same time. Those three guys played, and that's what you hear on the record.
That's cool. And was it like that with By the Way? Was it mostly isolated, or did they ever play off the floor together?
Yeah, no, mostly isolated, but they all played at the same time. It's just, you know, the isolation is just, you know, the phenomenon is you want to protect the quieter sounds from the louder sounds, and vice versa. You know, you don't want something to get polluted by another sound if you don't have to. You know, sometimes leakage works great, and it all together now, one for all for one, everybody play. But it's nice to have that control, so that if you change your mind and want to play a different bass line or play a different guitar line or try something different, that what you have played before isn't so loud on the record that you can't erase it or change your mind. So that's all. We did both those records at this, you know, a few years apart, but we did them in the same studio and very much the same. Drums were in the same place, bass was in the same place, John was in the same place. Just the difference of more. We did a lot. I remember doing a lot of background vocals with John and a lot of keyboard parts and a lot of guitar parts. By then, he was really leading the band, and he really didn't have. I don't think anybody was saying like, "Hey, man, I don't think we need all those background vocals." They were like, "Yeah, go ahead and put the background vocals on. Sounds great."
That's cool. So, are there any funny stories of the band you'd be able to share?
Well, there's some that I can't share.
For sure, for sure.
Some that I will share. So I mentioned I went to Budokan with them to Japan to record some live shows. And we're up there in the first class lounge, waiting for the plane to call us. So they finally call us, like, okay, first class, we're ready for you now. Everyone can come. So, you know, some people, everybody picking up their bag, and some people sort of head out, and we exit the first class area, and there's a barricade, not a barricade, but like a rope, like do not cross this rope, like yellow tape kind of a thing. So we're walking down the corridor, and there's a bunch of kids out there behind this tape. There's a bunch of kids, and they would come out through the door, and then they start cheering, and they say like, yeah, there's this noise, and then they break through the gate. They break through the thing. They're running. It's like they're running down the hallway that we're all heading for the plane down the corridor, and the Chili Peppers are like, oh, here they come, you know, here they come. And they charge at us, and they run right past us to this very famous young Japanese ingenue model.
That's hilarious.
We had no idea who she was. Very, very world famous. We all laughed. We all thought it was so funny. You know, I mean, you can't help it if you're famous. And when people are running at you, you think they're coming for you. And then they weren't. So